You clicked on this because you see two very different stories playing out in autonomous vehicles today, while early leaders stumble and a specialized delivery robot scales smoothly. The real stakes involve whether being late to the party actually makes sense when every first step carries massive risk of failure or regulatory deadlock. You will discover how Nuro turned its delayed entry into a strategic weapon, avoiding the expensive traps that bog down giants like Waymo while building a blueprint for safe commercial deployment. Consider the landscape in 2016 and 2017 when the first wave of autonomous vehicle companies began pouring billions into passenger-carrying robots. These pioneers built vehicles designed to carry humans through dense urban environments, which meant they had to solve an impossible engineering problem right out of the gate. They needed sensors capable of reading every moving object in a city while operating with zero tolerance for error because human lives were at stake. The result was hardware so complex and fragile that it became their own undoing. Companies like Waymo initially relied on expensive, heavy LiDAR arrays mounted directly to vehicle roofs, creating sensor fusion stacks that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per unit. This hardware-first approach meant every single new deployment required retrofitting legacy vehicles with massive amounts of equipment designed for a problem they did not yet fully understand how to solve at scale. Now consider the regulatory environment those early entrants faced when they first rolled out their fleets. They were effectively flying blind in terms of legal frameworks because no one had defined liability rules for autonomous systems before that moment. Engineers spent years fighting basic questions about who was responsible when a crash occurred, whether pedestrians could cross safely without human supervision, and how to define the boundaries of safe operation. This created a massive drag on their resources. Instead of focusing purely on improving software reliability or expanding fleet numbers, they had to dedicate entire legal teams and senior engineering leadership to navigating uncharted waters just to get permission to drive in public spaces at all. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. Nuro entered this arena years later with a fundamentally different philosophy that turned those same constraints into advantages. They did not try to build a robotaxi for passengers because the requirements for carrying humans are exponentially harder than moving goods. Instead, they designed a purpose-built vehicle platform from the ground up optimized specifically for delivery logistics and commercial zones. This decision allowed them to bypass the need for complex passenger safety systems like seatbelts, airbags, or reinforced cabin structures that add weight and cost without adding value to their mission of moving packages efficiently. The strategic benefit here is not just about saving money on hardware, but also about navigating a regulatory landscape that was already mapped out by those first movers. By the time Nuro began serious deployment phases in 2018, other companies had already established the initial legal precedents regarding liability and pedestrian interaction laws. They could leverage this existing playbook rather than fighting for basic legal existence from scratch. This meant their engineering teams could focus entirely on scaling fleet operations and refining perception algorithms instead of litigating with city councils over fundamental rules of engagement that were still being written in other jurisdictions. This leads to the core insight regarding their deployment model, which separates them sharply from passenger-focused competitors. Nuro adopted a software-defined approach where they avoided sunk costs by not retrofitting legacy vehicles at all. They utilized a lightweight, non-passenger vehicle architecture that simplified the safety certification process significantly because the risks associated with delivering packages are different than transporting people. This trade-off allowed them to enter geofenced commercial zones much faster than any robotaxi company could have done while maintaining rigorous safety standards appropriate for their specific use case. There is another layer to this second-mover advantage that often goes unnoticed in industry analysis. While early entrants were still struggling with edge cases involving complex human behavior, Nuro adopted a data-first approach by leveraging open-source simulation benchmarks and failure mode datasets from those earlier years of operation. They could study the known failures of 2019 through 2021 to train their perception stacks on specific scenarios before ever deploying a single physical unit in public streets. This effectively compressed their learning curve by several years because they did not have to learn every lesson the hard way. This strategic pivot also manifested in how they structured their logistics networks. Rather than attempting point-to-point robotaxi services that require navigating complex urban navigation challenges, Nuro focused on a hub-and-spoke architecture designed for controlled commercial environments. This allowed them to prove safety in lower speed zones first, where variables are more predictable and risks are easier to manage. By proving the concept in these constrained settings, they built trust with regulators and customers alike before attempting anything more ambitious. The result of this delayed entry is a system that avoids the pitfalls of hardware-first failure modes while leveraging established regulatory frameworks to accelerate adoption. They did not just arrive later, they arrived smarter by learning from every mistake made by those who went first. This allows them to scale operations without being bogged down by the immense complexity and cost structures that define the early years of autonomous vehicle development. The implication for the future is clear. Being a second mover does not mean you are behind in this industry. It means you have access to a roadmap drawn by others while avoiding the obstacles they encountered along the way. Nuro demonstrates that strategic timing can be just as powerful as technological innovation when building complex systems at scale. The companies that survive will likely be those that understand their specific constraints and build solutions tailored to them rather than trying to solve every problem for everyone from day one. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.